Yo, yo, it's time to discover the flow. Shout out to the bros. You know, I like to welcome everybody to discover the flow. No matter how you discover the show or discover the bros, now you about to see how far we can go, because it's time for discover the flow. Yeah, cowabunga do. You know live is how we come to you. Turn the levels up when you hear the boys coming through. The Pod Squad giving you just what you need, hitting you with a new special guest every week. Don't you dare hit skip, man, it's Tristan and Kip. DTF Pod about to take you on a trip. Mega Ran bring the heat, yeah. But be clear, I wasn't even supposed to be here. Welcome to Discover the Flow. No matter how you discovered the show or discovered the bros, now you about to see how far we can go, because it's time for Discover the Flow. Let's start the show.
I have something in my diary, and that would automatically adjust.
Yeah.
Right. Excellent.
So we typically just kind of roll into things. So we're just going to kind of go and see what happens.
Yeah,
Cool.
So where are you located at again?
London.
London. All right. So you
But I'm from Chicago, so there you go.
Oh, really? What part?
I grew up in St. Charles and lived in central Chicago until I was about 30.
Okay.
We are in downtown Naperville.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Nice,
so
nice.
not far from St. Charles, honestly.
That's
Excellent.
crazy.
So, first of all, how do you pronounce your last name? Because we don't want to get that wrong.
Sure. Thank you. It's Gough, like
Gough?
cough, only a G in front. Gough.
Okay. So, this is Andrew Gough. Why don't you explain to everybody what it is that you do and that you specialize in?
Sorry, you want me to do that now?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Right. Well, that's probably the toughest question of the day. I'm just an enthusiast of ancient mysteries and traditions. I research and write like little mini books on my website, but I'm also a fairly frequent presenter on history and mystery programs on most of the major networks. So that's something that I enjoy doing quite a lot.
Yeah, we were looking into a lot of your articles and a lot of different works of yours and stuff like that, and it kind of brought up topics that even I'd never thought about or never really known about. One that I was actually really interested in is you had wrote about an ancient guarded subterranean ritual center immortalized by Homer and Virgil in their epic tales of the Netherworld.
Yeah, that was a fascinating. Actually, it was a show I did for Forbidden History, and I was familiar with Robert Temple and Michael Bajan's work, where they believed that the Roman settlement at Baia rather, even in Italy, is Hades. And I went there, and it's more of a thermal spa, fascinating place. But right down the road is the Grotto of the Sibyl, where some chap's dog went missing, but he could hear it barking through some walls. So he knocked down the walls, and there was literally a river, like River Styx with a boat that goes to the other side where there's ritual chambers. So I think, not to say Hades was real, but somebody wanted to recreate it. And I believe that was not far from Naples, Italy.
that's actually really cool.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and it was fantastic. This guy, the whole family has passed down the maintenance of the Grotto of the Sibyl for generations and generations. In fact, Turner has one of his paintings. You can see it here in London, where he features, I think the lake is called Lake of Verno. And it's just an amazing atmospheric place. They take you with lit candles down these corridors, and you go across literally the River Styx in a boat, and you get to the other side, and it's a fantastic atmosphere.
So I was thinking about this, and you can blame Hollywood for this one, but you live in London. Have you ever been to the Louvre in Paris?
Oh yeah, yeah, many times. And my as a tourist, but also a researcher, and my job used to take me to Paris quite a bit. So I'd always sneak off late on a Friday and go for a couple hours. Love it. Yeah.
What do you know about the mysteries that surround the Rose Line and the Priory of Sion?
Yeah, well,
That's one that's I love that one. I get enamored by that.
yeah. Well, you're probably gonna hate my response to that. I was into it big time, and really loved the whole um, Rose Line that goes through Paris, but down to the south of France, and it goes right through a standing stone, which is like a kilometer away from Rennes-le-Chateau, which coincidentally is the inspiration for Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code, where the priest in 1891 knocks over a pillar, allegedly, and finds this ancient script. And it leads to all kinds of mysteries and like a real hero's journey for him. But I think the Priory of Sion is a hoax. I think Pierre Plantard and Philip de Cherici have all but said that. I mean, Plantard's done time in prison. He's been convicted for fraud. And de Cherici, who formed the radio program where they take joy in fooling the listeners, came up with the Priory of Sion, and it doesn't go back to the 10th century like Bajent and Lincoln would have you believe. I think it's just a modern day hoax. But the Rose Line or the Prime Meridian is something that I'm a firm believer in, because back in the day, if you wanted to, no safety deposit boxes, right? So if you wanted to leave something valuable behind, you'd put it in the ground. But where would you put it in the ground? How could you remember where it was? Well, if it was on the Rose Line, like Rennes-le-Chateau is for the old French meridian, but the modern day meridian is right down the street here. I live in Greenwich, and the Prime Meridian goes through places in England, one of which is affiliated with the Knights Templar that I'm currently excavating. So I think there was an effort to store stuff of value on the Rose Line or on the Prime Meridian. Same thing, I guess, right?
Yeah, yeah. We actually just did an interview not too long ago. I think, what was it? Was it Timothy May? Is that who it was?
No.
We talked to a gentleman
Tony McMahon.
Tony McMahon, a gentleman who was an expert on the Knights Templar and everything, and we were talking about how their original plan was to go and to protect the pilgrims, but like it seems like that they were influenced a little too heavily by the treasures that they found, and even their accrued value and their accrued treasures, became a huge mystery on whether or not it ever actually existed and whether or not they were able to move it before Friday the 13th.
Yeah, Tony's a great guy. I know Tony. We're on like all the same kind of shows together. We had almost something for Discovery Channel, and Tony was in the day before. And yeah, so he knows a lot about the Knights Templar. What I find really fascinating about them is, allegedly, these were men of God of really fine European descent who went to Jerusalem to protect the pilgrims, and that's all just a misdirection. But presupposed that they were like holy men, right? And then 5 minutes later, they're kissing, fine, they're worshiping Baphomet and silver-headed gods and goddesses, and yeah, a lot of those documents or that information was at their confession, at their trials. Spout those lies or you'll burn at the stake, like your grandmaster. Some of it's actually from their own literature. So what did they find in Jerusalem that transformed them from men of God to men of Baphomet? it's very interesting. And, so were they all good? Were they all bad? Were some good? Were some bad? I know for a fact they were everywhere. We don't realize they were in Russia. They were in Greenland. They were in South America, South Africa. And they brought back all these relics from antiquity. And our myself and Klaus Dana, who, we have this thing called Project Restoration, and we're trying to find a lot of these sites, and they, we think they took the mother lode to the UK. It was in Jerusalem. They went to the south of France, not far from Rennes-le-Château, up to Le Havre, 2 boats to Nova Scotia, 3 boats to England, then overland to various locations. So yeah, I'm on the hunt.
So what is Project Restoration? You just mentioned that a moment ago.
Yeah, we're trying to locate via a variety of different technologies, including SpaceX satellites, which I have had access to in the past. A SpaceX satellite engineer who I commissioned wanted, I shouldn't be saying this because it was back during lockdown, and they it was a chap in the military who had access to a console to the satellites and wanted an awful lot of money because he shouldn't be using them for this purpose. And during lockdown, I approached him one day, and he was in the Philippines, and I said, "I'll give you 500 pounds right now, or 1% of what we know is there." And he said, "Just give me the 500 pounds. So I wired it to him. I didn't hear from him for like a month. And I'm like, "Oh, you idiot." But he came back and said, is it, can I still have the 1%? Because it's not just the household you had me scan, it's the whole town. I'm like, "Yeah, we know it's the whole town." So we're excited about trying to get this stuff out of the ground and correct the history books, and put things in museums. There's a lot of stuff that's buried that literally and figuratively needs to come to light.
You talk about correcting the history books. Do you guys feel a certain amount of resistance with stuff like that, with people who have made their living off of what history is now, and they don't want to be, for lack of a better term, made an ass out of to turn out that they're wrong, or that history isn't what they specialized in and thought it was their whole life?
Mainstream historians, as they call them.
Yeah, I mean, we're educated to regurgitate the dates and places and people that his story says is true. But we could delve a little bit into Tartaria, perhaps, but I think we've been lied to so bad. I mean, the most ridiculous things we just accept. Like, what's a good example? Yeah, okay, so we're spinning planet Earth is at 1,000 miles an hour, while traveling around the sun at 66,600 miles an hour, while it travels around the Milky Way at 514,000 miles an hour, while the Milky Way travels around the universe at 1.3 million miles an hour, but the stars are in the same place every night. I mean, any 5-year-old would go, "Oh, that's rubbish. That can't be possible." Well, it's because it's not. Oceans aren't flying off into people's faces. I mean, it's the most ridiculous concept. And I think once you sort of swallow that pill, then the shape of the earth and what's above us and what might be below us also come into a scope of how we've been lied to.
Okay, we've got time, so feel free to elaborate on that. Like,
let's dive into this, because
what is above and below us, and
you hit
the shape.
You hit what is possibly one of my favorite conspiracy theories of all time.
Space is fake. Is that
No, actually, no. It's flat Earth, the firmament, the ice wall. They all kind of tie in together to this flat Earth theory that the Earth is flat.
Yeah, I agree. They really do. They really do. So
the ancient giant tree theory that, you know, these rock formations that we see are actually stumps of trees that were cut down by celestial giants at the beginning of the Earth.
yeah, I mean, the best way I think to think of it, and it's going to sound like a real, as they say in the UK, a real piss take, is we live in a snow globe. Picture a snow globe. That's us. The firmament is above us for a start. And every theology or culture from antiquity, from Inca to Hopi to Hebrew to Catholicism to Celtic, you name it, they all talk about, you know, the equivalent of on day 2 of creation, God created a watery substance that conceals the dry earth below from the watery abyss beyond. I think it's the Quran. I might be wrong. It might be the early Hebrew text who talks about 7 levels of firmament. Come on to that in a second, because there's evidence that Don't Look Up. What was that film? Don't Look Up. Was that the name of it?
Yeah, there was a film.
Yeah, the one with
Don't Look Up.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Don't look up, because the real mystery is down below in the oceans. Forget the sky. So the firmament is this substance that says it's a closed system. We can't leave Earth. There's no place to go. If you look at the 2014 civilian aviation rocket that was sent up, the first non-government funded rocket to be sent up into space, you can watch it on YouTube. And at 72 miles, it doesn't hit and explode. It embeds itself in something, sticks there for a minute or two. You can watch it on YouTube, then slowly falls down. It's hit the firmament. Enoch talks about seeing the firmament. And if the moon is 240,000 miles from Earth, the firmament appears to be, well, it was 72 miles above Earth in Arizona, but towards Antarctica. And this is the bit that I struggle with is, I mean, and I don't have the answers. I know it's not true. I know it's a lie, but I don't necessarily have the answers. And does the firmament come down on our world, or does it come down on a broader spectrum of rock that includes the continents beyond the ice wall? Now, all ancient maps, and now lots of whistleblowers coming out, Instagram, Telegram, full of them, who have flown over the ice wall and seen these other continents, you know, Thule, Atlantis, Lemura, all these places of legend aren't in our realm. They're beyond the ice wall. And the ice wall is really Antarctica that goes all the way around our continents. And we're not spinning. If we were spinning 1,000 miles an hour, I would have gone up in a helicopter and been with you guys in Chicago in about 20 minutes, probably, right? Because the Earth is spinning. I just landed, I'm there. All you have to do is look at the flight plans. A flight going from A to B will stop. A flight going from A to C will stop at B, but you look at B and it's nowhere near C. So why are you stopping there? Well, on a flat Earth, it's a straight line. But also know that, you know, there's horizontal flights. There's no north-south flights that, 1, go over Antarctica and 2, go over the North Pole, the true North Pole, Black Rock, which is the magnetic center of the Earth, which is even more forbidden and mysterious than Antarctica.
So you touched on it for a moment there. You say we're not rotating through space, like the Earth itself isn't turning.
No, I mean, it's just, you know, water always finds a level, no matter what. Gravity, I think, is, just look at this. They're lying to us about everything. You know, don't get me started on NASA. It's like 99.9% lies. And you'd have to be just an NPC on steroids not to see it. This latest space station rescue is just pathetic. Where do they get the Christmas hats? The woman who has gray hair and
is now tan and her
she's
hair is
tan.
perfect. Yeah, I was curious about that one too.
And they land with this amazing Hollywood parachutes, and there's dolphins dancing around the water, singing. You know, it's ridiculous. And so, you know, it just and you hear Elon Musk talking about, you know, Occupy Mars. Well, Mars, if anything, is probably another continent beyond the ice wall. Admiral Byrd, the most decorated military man in U.S. history, said, you know, after Operation High Jump in 46, 47, whoever that was, you know, I've seen the land of the great unknown. And he said, we can be in that Chilean article, a Chilean newspaper interview, we United States could be attacked from craft coming from either pole. And it's curious that even though all the images of the Earth are photoshopped as round, some of the early ones show that the pole is wide open. Even on Saturn, it's shaped like a octagon, hectagon. And Byrd said that these craft will attack us. And then, you know, 2 months later, 3 months later, Roswell happens. 2 weeks after that, you know, the CIA, Department of Defense, all those things are created as a result of Roswell, as a result of Byrd, who had been to Antarctica, warning us that would happen. And Antarctica, you know, think of all the countries in the world. We can't agree on currency, politics, anything. But the one thing you can agree upon is stay the hell out of Antarctica, because there's an access point, and there's several access points, not only beyond the ice wall, but also into the inner Earth. And if we're flat, or not really flat, I don't know, you know, how do I know, right? But we're not round. And if we were round, it would be a humongous piece of rock that we're on. But we're not rotating, or at least we're not spinning. Maybe we're a snow globe moving through space, but we're not spinning. You know, one of us should be nearly upside down from the other, but we're not.
If we're tidal locked in place, how does the rising and setting of the sun work?
Yeah, well, they say the sun is 92 million miles away, 93 million, whatever. What's a million amongst friends? But it looks the same size as the moon. And when you're on a plane, you can see it below the clouds. The sun and the moon are in our realm. So if you have a snow globe, the sun and the moon are within the snow globe in a very tight framework. It looks a lot like the astrological clock on the tower in Prague. And you know, today it's interesting, right? Because we see lots of reported incidents of multiple suns and moons being in the same place at the same time. Are we at the end of an epoch? But again, I don't have the answers. But you know, there's if you look with the best cameras you can buy at Sirius or Venus, they look really watery, and it's because they're in the firmament. The stars are in the firmament, and the ancient scriptures of all kinds say that as well. So it's a closed system, and the fact that there's multiple levels of firmament, I think, is reinforced by what's his name? I can't think of his first name. Apologies, but he did. Blue Planet came out ironically on September 11th, 2001. Mike DeGarry, and you can watch on YouTube where he's in this sub, and he's talking about it. He's like, it's unbelievable. We've reached the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America, and there's another ocean. So they're like, what the hell? How can there be another ocean beneath the ocean? We're already at the bottom. And they try to go down, but they bounce off of it. And they're bouncing off of it because it's another level of firmament separating us from that world beneath us that is so legendary, that has so many proof points of so many people who have been there. And of course, he died in a helicopter crash a week or two later. Gary, however you say his name, who enthusiastically did that interview years after Blue Planet went live.
So this kind of leads into my second favorite theory, and that's the simulation theory.
Well, actually, hold on one second. Before we get to that, I got one more question on this. Does this mean that you think so like Hubble and all the different telescopes that send back the pictures from space and like pictures of different stars and planets and galaxies, in your opinion, is that all just like Hollywood? Is that just CGI?
It really is. I believe it is. And only recently have you seen like some of the I think it's the Chinese who have published photos from their space stations, and it's all flat as far as the eye can see. There's no curvature. In Chicago, you can go over to, what is it, Indiana? Is it Indiana? They always use the example where you can look back across Lake Michigan and you can see the skyscrapers.
Yeah, from the dunes.
Yeah, thank you. You shouldn't be able to see that. And my dad was a pilot for TWA for 30 years, and there's no adjustment for curvature of the Earth. Bridges that go 100 miles don't take into account any curvature of the Earth because there is none. And the thing that I'm really intrigued with is not only is Antarctica forbidden, but Black Rock. And there was an incredible book written about Black Rock, which is allegedly, it's gone now, but there's a dialogue between the alchemist John Dee and the chap who wrote the book. And those letters are in the British Museum, where he's saying that Black Rock, isn't it interesting that that's the name of this big corporate conglomerate that owns every, big company on the planet. But Black Rock, a 33-kilometer wide black rock that goes way up into the sky, into the clouds, with 4 rivers going into it, i.e. Garden of Eden stuff. And it's like the true Nordic tree of life. And it might be, like an elevator that takes you out of this realm or goes down into the other realms below us. Because if you start, the film Truman Show.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is that a good analogy to the snow globe that we're living in when he walks out, but at the very end, Ed Harris, the director of the Truman Show in the movie, is sitting at a table, which I think could very well be the structure of the universe. Somebody knows it and they haven't told us. It's a flat table with a globe over it, with some land inside of it. And then the table makes this peculiar shape. And behind it on the wall is an even more psychedelic dimensional design. And it's as though they're trying to tell us this is the shape of the universe. And the bit of it that you live on is flat. And if it's flat, or flat's not the right word, so if it's flat, why wouldn't they tell us it's flat? Well, what if we're living in a prison? To your point, Kip, what if we're living in a simulation? And this is the simulation portion of the rock, and there's a firmament that's covering us. What I can't get a clear answer on. Does the firmament just cover our continents, or does it cover the entire rock that we're on?
So, but touching back on simulation theory here, just because it's in my head and I don't want to forget my thought. Is simulation theory just a modern day view of the firmament and flat Earth type theory? Because if you're in an enclosed space and everything happens within this enclosed bubble that we have, isn't it just the same thing? Isn't that the same thing as the simulation theory? It's just a modern take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I see where you're going with that, and honestly, I don't know.
Because all simulations have to be within a confined space. A simulation by nature has to be in a confined space.
Well, and
Yeah, and that kind of makes you question, where did it come from, who's controlling it, who created it.
and who's the boss man of this snow globe? Um, at times, I think it's not a benevolent boss man. At times, I think it might be
Petulant 4-year-old.
yeah, yeah. Well, so simulation theory is quite complex, and I struggle with it a lot of times.
Take your time. That's one thing we have.
I love this. Two elements of it I want to talk about. One is CERN, and one is a theory that the world ended in 1988. And me personally, I think, well, yeah, music did, but never mind. But I went to see the Sex Pistols this week, if you can believe it.
Hold on, before you go any further, what ended the world in '88?
Well, this is a crazy theory, and I was just asked. I was doing a live broadcast for my TV show on Unified TV called The Conspiracy Hour, and someone asked me, "Is there a conspiracy theory that's just too out there for you?" And I said, "Well, the conspiracy that the world ended in 1988 due to some cataclysmic event, and they had to readjust the simulation. I don't really see evidence for that. But what I find, I mean, just park that for a second. What I find really interesting is it 2008, and a woman's presenting to an audience, and she says, you know, call me weird, but I remember when Nelson Mandela died in the 80s. But of course, he died in 2013, and or something like that, right? And a lot of the audience members went, I remember him dying in the 80s as well.
It's so weird. My brain is trying to rationalize right now how many of these topics connect.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah. And so, no, actually, that was 2009. And 2008, CERN launched. You know, in Chicago, I used to have a sales job where I was calling on Fermilab. Remember, you know, Fermilab.
That is,
I've worked at Fermilab. A few
miles away from us, actually. That's just over in Warrenville, the next town over.
I was a contractor at Fermilab for a year.
Interesting. Well, you know, so CERN is like you know, a more recent Fermilab, but same kind of thing. And so two things about CERN that I think are really interesting is it went live the year before that woman started talking about the fact that I remember Nelson Mandela dying in the 80s. And so that's the Mandela effect. And a lot of people think, and I think it's an interesting theory, the simulation changed when CERN started to do its Large Hadron Collider stuff. And I just did a show for Conspiracy Hour on CERN, and I couldn't find the video that was always there. I tried it every which way, and it was a woman interviewing the director of CERN over 10 years ago. And she's like, you know, the economy is so bad. How can you justify spending all these millions and billions on an atom smasher? Well, and they go back and forth. And she's like, no, really, how can you justify this? How do you sleep at night? And the guy's getting really agitated. And finally he says, well, what price would you put on time travel? And the interviewer goes, did you just say time travel? So CERN appears to have created the Mandela effect, and for me, and I'm looking at you guys. You know, I'm probably older than you, clearly, but hopefully you'll remember this. One of the Mandela effects that really drives me nuts is I remember that iconic scene in Risky Business when Tom Cruise is doing air guitar to Bob Seger's Old Time Rock and Roll in his shorts, a button-down shirt, and these iconic black Ray-Bans. Now, Alf and other shows all parody that scene, and everyone who parodies that scene has the black Ray-Bans. But look at it today. There's no Ray-Bans.
There's Ray-Bans on the cover of the movie, but there are none in that scene, according to the film.
Sir, I think you're hitting on the wrong thing, though. I think the big question is it Bernstein or Berenstein Bears, damn it?
Oh, good Lord.
That's what I want to know.
Bernstein or Berenstain?
Do you remember Richard Simmons?
I do.
Yes. What do you remember most about him? I mean, lovely guy, very iconic.
The short shorts, the fro, the tank top, just the never-ending energy. Yeah.
But didn't he have a headband? Wasn't it like Loverboy? It was iconic.
See, now that one I don't remember. I don't remember a headband on that one.
Wow. And
see, my question with the Mandela effect, though, is from a skeptic's point of view on that particular aspect of things. Is it that things changed, or is it that because we're so connected now and we have the echo chamber that is the internet, people that believe that they remember something one way and people believe that they remember something another way find all the people that agree with them, and they go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth in the echo chamber again, and it creates this false memory of something that didn't actually exist.
The false memory explanation is a really valid one, and I'm a big believer in Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is the one we should look at first. It was optical illusion, not aliens or whatever. Do you remember Jiffy peanut butter?
No, I remember Jif.
Jif and
I remember Jiffy Pop and I remember Jif, but I do not remember Jiffy peanut butter.
Wow. I actually remember it being Jiffy peanut butter. That's the funny part.
Yeah, no, thank you. And there's some biggies. These are all really subtle things, but what else are we not?
I remember a mirror on the wall, but if you go back and watch the video, it's magic mirror on the wall.
Yes, exactly. And what's the classic line? I think it's out of Casablanca. There's a Mandela effect of,
Frankly, Scarlet, I don't give a damn.
Yeah, never said that. So some iconic lines were never said. And if we're aware of those subtle changes or false memories, are there less subtle ones that we're not aware of? Is that what chemtrails are about? At least now people are acknowledging that. We can talk about it socially without people thinking you're totally nuts. But what if, going back to the firmament, and I think, forgive me, I think it was yourself, Kip, I might be wrong, who brought up the trees, these huge trees that would go a mile up in the sky. And we look at them now and that's a mountain range. Well, actually, so what if Earth was a greenhouse? I know it sounds ridiculous, but extrapolate for a second. And what if they cut those trees down? And what if they said, well, it's a greenhouse. It's a good place to do some laboratory work, and we can do hybrid creation of humans. And we can use them as slaves, and they can harvest the gold in Africa and all this kind of stuff, Sitchin and all the Sumerian text. It's interesting. And I think if you look now that we're all awake and you see celebrities and politicians all part of the Black Eye Club and all doing this 666 over the eye and the one eye, the Eye of Horus, it's now really visible. I did a big piece. I've written about all kinds of stuff, but I tell you, nothing has caused people to say, the hell with you. I'm not even going to open that article. Ludicrous. I've written about inner earth. I've written about firmament, bees, prairies. But when I write about Paul McCartney having died in 1966, people think I've lost my mind. And it's just interesting that nobody wants to re-examine. Nobody believes we've been lied to about almost everything.
Mandela's death in the 80s was the first of the supposed Mandela effects, right?
That's where they got their name. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's where Fiona Broome, she's famously the one who named it.
Exactly.
is there a possibility? And I'm not saying that these things aren't real, because there's some of them where I'm like, holy shit, I remember it that way, and then there's some where I don't. But is there a possibility that just her memory was twisted by the media? I'm like, is there a possibility that the media basically just told us, oh, Mandela's dead, when he wasn't?
Yeah, entirely possible. They call it broadcasting and programming for a reason, I think.
Yeah.
Not only subliminal, but mainstream media is just poison. And I spent 30 plus years, 32, 33 years. I moved to Milwaukee after I lived in Chicago. Then I came to the UK. But I have a big family in Chicago, and they don't even speak to me. It's like, if I'm not Camilla, I'm the Antichrist. So we're all really the subjects of the programming that we've been conditioned with. And there's a certain flavor of that in Illinois versus other states. And we're all subject to it.
You touched a moment ago on Paul McCartney. I want to get back to that one, because that's another interesting one that for years my ex mother-in-law and I discussed.
Yeah, it's I just saw him in concert. Absolutely fantastic. Bless him. He's 83. His voice is shot, but he gives it his all. And he was in the Beatles. There's nothing earth-shattering about this, but you have a band who is worth $1 billion, and nobody else is even close to that. And Paul, according to the conventional story, died in the car crash that occurred on the 10th of September, dying on the 11th of September, interestingly enough, 1966. And the Beatles were created by Tavistock, which is the original kind of Illuminati, the original kind of we're going to begin this process of decentralizing family values, and we're going to promote drugs, and we're going to promote tuning out of the family unit, and all these things that the seed was planted back then. And Tavistock had a huge moneymaker. So they agreed, okay, well, first of all, we can never tour again. Paul's dead. But we keep making albums, right? And so that's what they did. And they brought in a guy who was known to them, who looked a little like Paul, but not a lot. And he had plastic surgery, and they sing songs about that, Dr. Roberts. And
doesn't one of their records, if you play it backwards, it says Paul is dead or something like that?
Oh, there's like a couple dozen of them. But the thing is the car crash. So it's a Sunday night. Paul storms out of the studio, having been in an argument with his manager, Brian Epstein, who, by the way, would be hospitalized 2 weeks later due to stress. Well, stress because they've just faked the death of Paul McCartney. And it's raining. And he is in an argument with the band, and he heads out in his little sports car, his Aston Martin, and picks up a hitchhiker. And she is a very attractive lady, and they get in this car crash, and she survives for a little while, gets out of the car, comes back, tries to rescue him. The car explodes, and he dies. So Tavistock said, well, you're going to replace him, and you're going to do some more studio albums till we figure out what to do. Now, the thing that I find really interesting is the motive. Let me come back to that, because let me just kick off the hard evidence. DNA. All the Beatles fathered children when they were young. You're a rock star, literally, and the biggest rock star on the planet. So, you've fathered some children. Paul did, and he paid them some money. And thus they have his DNA. And now the woman in Germany who's grown up says, you paid my mother 13,000 pounds in 1967 or 1966, whatever it was. No, I'm sorry. It was like 64, 65. But the point is, Paul admitted that he had fathered this child. So now she has taken Paul to court saying, well, you're the wealthiest man in the UK. I'm your daughter. Don't I deserve some more? And the judge twice has said, okay, give us your DNA, Paul. And the DNA doesn't match. So DNA doesn't match. And then you have Paul McCartney being arrested in Japan for smuggling in like a pound of dope. The second time he's arrested in Japan, he's in Wings at the time, Paul McCartney in Wings. And the Japanese are freaking out, not because, well, they're upset about the drug trafficking, but they're really upset that his fingerprints don't match. And they took the fingerprints when he burnt down a pub in Hamburg where you take a condom, nail it to the wall, and light it on fire. But it burnt. That's what you did then. But it burned.
That's what I do nowadays.
That's what you do nowadays, exactly. And
not gonna wear that crap. What the hell?
DNA doesn't match. The fingerprints don't match, and they've done. People who've said, "Oh, this is bullshit. I'm a scientist. I'm gonna do a voice analysis and prove it's the same guy." And they all come back and say, "Oh shit, no." The whole structure, the throat, the sound, everything is completely different. And you have all the song lyrics, all the symbolism. Go on YouTube, you can see Graham Nash saying, there's people who still think that Paul McCartney was in Wings. And a little wink to the interviewer. Look at his wife, his second wife, Heather Mills, who's also on YouTube, irate, saying, I have a box. If they kill me, the box is going to be released. It has information. You can't handle what's in the box. You are not going to believe. You could never possibly believe the truth. And if you did, you'd be devastated.
So you're saying it's better than Gwyneth Paltrow's head?
Yes. Although every bit is shocking. And
you're an idiot. The
true motive. So there's this incredible book, and I'm just looking behind me because I can pull it out here. It's the most unbelievable read, and here it is. Give me a second. It's the memoirs of Billy Shears, and it's written by Billy Shears is the name of the new Paul. It's William Shepard.
I was going to ask that. Yeah.
On Sgt. Pepper's, Lonely Hearts Club Band, the title song, let me introduce to you the one and only Billy Shears. And so Billy Shears is writing his memoirs, and it's unbelievable the amount of detail. And it's a very lucid read. And he talks about how John and Paul, when they were in Stockholm, were persuaded. They'd been approached before, but they were persuaded to sell their soul to Satan in exchange for this phenomenal world domination. And the Satanic Code, if you believe that exists, demands a sacrifice. So the theories on Paul, and what he says in here is that this notion of the car crash, which was front page news in British tabloids and newspapers and television and US television on the night it happened, is just a cover story for the fact that he was murdered. And the two murder scenarios I think are just amazing. One is the KKK. And on YouTube, you can see the KKK saying, no, listen, these guys are anti-Christian. They said they're more popular than Jesus. And the interviewer is like, well, what are you going to do about it? And the KKK is like, well, we have ways and means of dealing with this. And so that they killed Acute Beetle. They killed the main guy. But actually, they were going after Epstein, who one was Jewish, two gay, which was illegal at the time, and against the KKK's ethos.
Wait, hold on. Epstein as in Jeff like Jeffrey or someone else?
Well, no, way back when, the Beatles manager, Brian Epstein.
Okay. Okay.
And so, he checked into a hospital for extreme anxiety 2 weeks after 2 weeks after Paul died. But there are two theories about the fact that Paul was actually murdered. One is the KKK, and two is, in which case you can see the Beatles going two fingers, like, okay, fine, we'll show you. We'll replace Paul, but we'll never tour again because that wouldn't work. Because this guy's 3 to 4 inches taller, doesn't look like him. That's why everyone grew beards. But the theory that I like is that, Chicago, we cherish our gangsters, Al Capone, etc.
Oh, yeah.
But you have the Krays in London, and they're the biggest gangsters outside of Chicago in the world, and they want a piece of this billion-dollar juggernaut. And Epstein, their manager, says no. But they have photos of Epstein, who's gay, having sex with Dizzy Gillespie, and they blackmail him, and they want to manage the Beatles. They want part of that billion dollars, and he won't give it to him. So the theory is that also, you can even Wikipedia this, the Beatles solicitor was killed by the Krays. The Krays wanted the Beatles solicitor to represent them and get them out of prison for murder, and he wouldn't. So he had them killed. So the thought is that Epstein wouldn't pay the blackmail any longer, and he wouldn't let them have a piece of the action. So they killed Paul to get back at him.
So this raises a big question for me. And no disrespect to Paul McCartney, but John Lennon was arguably the biggest of the Beatles. Why replace McCartney and not try to replace Lennon? Like, was his death way too public? Or
no, if Paul died, if Paul died in 1966, he was either murdered or there was a car crash. There's another theory that he became aware that the satanic code says there needs to be a sacrifice, and it looks like it's you, Paul, that he tried to fake his own death. A lot of people drove his car. There's a photograph of him. I have it on my website that Billy Shears says, if you go to like a minute and 51 seconds into the song 1812, which never appeared on an album, it's a video, you'll see a photograph of Paul in the morgue, and it's horrific. There's nothing left of the head. It's just the most grotesque thing you've ever seen. And there was the cop at the time said, he looks like a walrus, and John Lennon punched him for that. So Lennon's death, Lennon's killed by Chapman, who was a self-proclaimed Satanist who strips naked and performs rituals to Satan, the hill of the strength to kill John, kills him while in front of the Dakota, which is where he lived, which is the very building that Rosemary's Baby is filmed in, Roman Polanski being the director. And the Beatles know Charles Manson. They dropped acid at Sharon Tate's house back when it was owned by Doris Day's son or daughter, I forget which. So the whole thing is just really intertwined, and the common denominator is Tavistock, is Satanism, and so was the murder of Lennon the sacrifice that didn't happen to Paul, because Paul's death was an accident. And people forget that someone broke into George Harrison's house and stabbed him 15 times in the chest, and he survived. And in this book, it says that was the week after he had told one person that he was going to come forward about this great charade of Paul being the same guy he ever was, and confess. And the person he spoke to was Billy Shears, William Shepard, the current Paul McCartney. And but there's so much more. You know, he blew his mind out in a car. He hadn't noticed that the light had changed. All these lyrics and all the symbolism. It's one of the most fascinating things, and it's not meant to be dismissive of who this guy is today. I loved Wings, and you know, Billy Shears, William Shepard, he wrote Sergeant Pepper's. That was his baby, and as was Abbey Road and everything that came afterwards, because the Beatles were too distraught.
I mean, whether this guy is Paul McCartney or not, you know, you can't deny there's some talent there. You know, the person knows what they're doing, but it kind of makes me wonder. I'm like, you know, why even if it's real cover it up in the first place? Because honestly, other bands have went on to replace members and still had massive success. Like even AC/DC, they replaced their lead singer and arguably became 10, 20, 30 times bigger than they ever would have otherwise, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it was the most beloved band in the world, and it's a great question. And if he was murdered, then you could see it being like two fingers. Okay, KKK. Okay, craze. Oh, yeah, no problem. Well, I'll show you. There was a reporter who was onto it, and he was from Birmingham, and he said, you know, here's this wrecked car. It's Paul's license plate. Let me speak to Paul. And they were scrambling to try to figure out what to do. And they offered him a lot of money. He wouldn't accept it. So Tavistock got involved and said, you need to accept this money or else, and we'll give you a trip, a cruise from the UK to Italy. So he accepted that. And then the Beatles run off to India, where Mia Farrow, who would later star in Rosemary's Baby, again, this big satanic theme, was there. But George Harrison checks into the hotel under an alias, and that alias is the name of that reporter, which is Sam Wells. And McCartney would later write about this on Band on the Run. He sings Sailor Sam came from Birmingham, but he never will be found. That's Helen Wheels. And then on Band on the Run, the song itself, I forget, but another reference to Sailor Sam. And you know, the evidence is pretty great. And there's an interview with Ringo in 2016 that people say is fake, where he says, it wasn't our call. We just thought we would say that, well, yeah, Paul's still alive. We'll do one more album. It was Sergeant Pepper, and it did really well. So we did another, and then all of a sudden we couldn't stop, because what do we do about it now? And we never thought it through, and we were just told what to do. But you know, one of my favorite bands, Joy Division, their lead singer hung himself, and they kept going without him, and they got even bigger. So why didn't they do that? I don't think it was their call.
There's a claim that the interview with Ringo is from a satirical website. Like
exactly. And you know, I'm open for that being a fraud. I'm also open for the fact that the people who own the media, you know, you can count them on one hand. So it's not only.
I mean, it's not beneath people to troll their fans and be like, "Oh, this is one of the theories. Let's fuck with them." You know?
Yeah. And but even Paul, he's 83, so you cut anyone some slack who's of advanced years. But he says in the book, Memoirs of Billy Shears, that he just makes up Paul's history as he goes, and he does. I mean, Paul McCartney's father dies. Paul McCartney loved his father. He doesn't go to the funeral. His sister says it never speaks to him. And why do you think there's so much animosity from John Lennon towards him? He writes Glass Onion and all these songs where he just is spewing venom, and they were best of friends. You know, the agreement was Paul was supposed to like fill this void for a while. William Shepard was, until they figure out what to do or dissolve the band. But he carried on iconically with Wings and solo career. But if you every talk show he goes on, whether it's Letterman or any of the current ones, they all take the Mickey out of him. And Katy Perry's on one show with him, and she's like, "Listen, I am more authentic than you are. At least I'm real." And everyone jokes that he's the most authentic Paul McCartney impersonator, because I think he is. You have all the hard evidence, DNA, fingerprints, scientific throat vocal analysis. Then you have all the soft evidence, the lyrics, the physical differences, left-handed, right-handed. You can see him on film in India playing guitar right-handed. Well, he was left-handed, et cetera, et cetera.
That's actually pretty incredible, putting all that together. That's
it. And I think he's a really good guy. He strikes me, but like when you watch him on a talk show, and Jonathan Ross is the big talk show, or was for years in the UK, and he sat down 10 years ago or so, and he's given it that little pyramid shape with his hands before
the Illuminati.
He's part of the club, and he does all the Beatles records. I mean, very subtly, if you go back to see Meet the Beatles, one eye is in shadow. You have John Lennon doing this and a dandelion on one eye, and it's all the symbolism that we know now to be Illuminati. They were doing way back when.
So, speaking of the Illuminati, I'm going to switch gears on you because I think we pretty much beat this one down pretty good,
so to speak.
Yeah, but why Denver International Airport as the home of the Illuminati? Why? Of all the places in the world, why?
Well, I don't know if it's the home of the Illuminati. I've not heard that before, and I don't know if we. What do we call them even?
If nothing else, a hub, maybe.
Pardon?
If nothing else, a hub, maybe.
A hub. Well, so what? The Denver airport, supposedly 7 or 8 levels underground of different races of humanoid hybrids and extraterrestrials, etc. And they don't try to hide it with a lot of their imagery in paintings and sculptures in the airport. I don't know, is Denver just one example that we're kind of aware of now, thanks to some whistleblowers and some really suggestive art and sculpture work? All the trillions that have gone into NASA, there is no space to try to penetrate. You could try to blow through the firmament. You see every rocket going up into space. It looks as though it's a boat on a lake with water spewing, because there is water spewing. You've hit a watery barrier. And I just think Denver Airport, all the trillions that were spent on NASA, I think it was spent for deep underground military bases for things like trafficking, adrenochrome harvesting, experiments, all that sort of stuff. When you see some of these underground chambers and the equipment they have to create them, it's unbelievable. So Denver appears to be like one big laboratory. And there's talks that Denver and the Cheyenne Mountain Range is where the real Trump resides, under the protection of whomever, white hats allegedly. And my next episode that I'm just shoring up my research on for Conspiracy Hour on Unified TV is about clones. There's so many different clones, not just, you watch Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible and you think you're watching the bad guy, and at the end he takes the mask off and it's Tom Cruise and you're like, wow, amazing. Well, can't you extrapolate that mask wearing would be real? And look at Biden, and look at
Biden blows my mind.
Oh, and look at Elon Musk. When he
I
was,
can actually get behind the fact that Biden has used body doubles, because I've
well,
seen that man be my height and then 6'4". Like,
and
wait,
same
what the
with
hell?
Trump. Same with Trump. You know, is he taller than Netanyahu or shorter? Make up your mind. So there's mask wearing, but the kind of cloning that I think is really fascinating is the black eye club, and it's always the left eye which is black, and there is allegedly a small sort of non-human creature that goes in through the eye, which is why it's black and takes over the consciousness, mimics it to a degree. I mean, look at Elon Musk.
Kind of like a symbiote.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at the Pope, every celebrity, sports figure, politician, they all have horrendous black eyes. There's Jay Leno on YouTube. His whole left side of his face is black. And everyone, you know, I fell down a hill. I hit myself on the stair. You know, who's punching?
Okay, this is one I don't really know much about, so please feel free to go into as much detail as you want on this one.
Well, the Black Eye Club, you know, if you just Google Black Eye Club, you'll see a picture of everyone who's anyone with a black left eye, and supposedly it's, I know it sounds nuts, it's a little creature, you know, shorter than probably the size of your little finger, that goes in through the left eye and takes over the consciousness. It's a reptilian sort of Draco kind of consciousness, and they take over the personality, the consciousness. It's not the same. I think that happened recently to Kate Middleton, who that's a whole nother story. Elon Musk, though, I come back to that. You know, 5 minutes ago, he was a baddie. He's wearing NWO jackets. He's talking about putting a microchip, AI chip in your brain. And his mother is full on into it with these 666 one eye stuff, clearly satanic. And now he's Doge. He's doing all these amazing things, but he has his son on his shoulders in the Oval Office, kind of pulling on his neck, like, you know, is this a mask? Did you see the video of Elon Musk's nanny in the last 90 days? This video.
No.
She's very well-spoken lady. She's got to be in her 60s now, and you know, you can watch it. It's being scrubbed, so check it out as soon as you can. And she's saying, you know, the family came over and I thought they were going to be black, but they were whiter than me. Her words, not mine. And I got to know them. And Elon, she calls him, she said his name was slightly different then. It was Elan or something like that, but it was changed to Elon later. But she said that he did something as a young child that was so very dark that it was shocking. So she asked the mother, is Elon the Antichrist? And the mother, she said, didn't even flinch. And she said, no, he's not the Antichrist, but he will be beloved by humankind. And when that happens, he will usher in the Antichrist.
Man, I wish I would have had a mom that believed in me that much growing up.
So
flat out told me I wasn't going to be shit.
So you know, clones are, you know, labs where, whether it's Denver Airport or elsewhere, where people are being engineered. Supposedly cloning has existed since, you know, the 20s or 30s. And now we all see on Instagram and TikTok and other places, whether it's Zuckerberg or Nicolas Cage, they look just like someone from a couple hundred years ago.
See, I've seen those. Those are wild.
Yeah, Nicolas Cage through the years is kind of a wild trip to go down.
Yeah.
Like
looking into the Black Eye
figures.
Club. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Looking into the Black Eye Club stuff that you were talking about, there's talks about different theories where, like, it's alien abductions or soul scalping, which I'm not really sure what exactly that would entail. But then there's also talks about it's an anti-aging drug that provides like a euphoric effect to it. Like, I wouldn't be surprised by that one at all, because who doesn't want to look young forever, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole this is YouTube, right? We're on now. Is that right?
Adrenochrome. Well, we're not actually on anything right now. We don't release everything until later on.
Yeah, well, I mean, adrenochrome is you know, we all know what that is, so no reason to go into detail about that. But that is that sort of drug of.
I'm going to be honest. I didn't know what it was. So, I mean, if you want to explain a little bit, because all I know is it's derived from adrenaline.
Yeah, I mean, it's derived from blood from an adrenalized child. The younger, the better, whether they're sexually sodomized or just tortured. And then you extract the blood during that horrific moment of not just adrenaline, not like running a marathon, but being terrorized.
Moments of fear or pain or something.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, in a way, the frustrating thing is that with AI now just exploding, how much of the stuff that we, you know, in years past I've seen on the dark web of what Hillary did to a young girl by literally taking her face, the skin of her face off with her assistant, and the woman screaming. And actually that face is the same face you see in Castaway on the soccer ball that Tom Cruise is using, that all the celebrities, Ellen and all the rappers wear on their jumper. It's this really insidious sort of celebration of the harvesting of the blood of someone who's been tortured, because that gives you supposedly, you know, it's like a fountain of youth. Look at Celine Dion. She looks like she's 170 now, and the adrenochrome's been stopped, and she, you know, was looking great a couple of years ago. Now, not so much. And there's many examples of that. But the Black Eyed Club, some of the Black Eyed Club alludes to that, but really it's this phenomena of anyone who's anyone has the left eye totally go black. And, you know, there is an understanding that that's because the soul scalping is their soul has been killed, and the consciousness has been replaced with a non-human entity.
Why is it always the left eye?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. In fact, funny you should ask. I'm currently looking into that because I'm asking myself that question. Why is it the left eye?
It's like pro wrestling. You always work the left side, so you're not forgetting which body part it is, you know?
Yeah.
Inside baseball there.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, you know, it's disturbing to think that, you know, this snow globe could be the realm of that's sort of run by the baddies. And I think there's different levels of acceptance of things that are against what we've been taught. And I just did an interview with somebody for a television program, and it's a historian who is just amazing. So I said, all right, there's one topic on the planet that if we talk about, I can go to prison. So that's the topic I want to talk about. How dare they threaten to send me to prison if I talk about that topic? Let's talk about that. What percentage of the Holocaust is true? And
you could be sent to prison for talking about that?
Oh, yeah. I could be extradited from London to Germany and put in prison. There's a woman who's 91, or she's 93 now, and she said, I lived through it. It's not what happened. Prison. Gone. In the UK, if I like a post that they determine is right-wing, whatever that is, I can go to prison. There's people doing Facebook time for saying, people doing time in prison for a post on Facebook that have to do with, I really think we're letting too many illegal immigrants into the country. We need to have some border management. Prison. I'm doing an excavation right now, and I'm really focused on abiding by the law. There's like metal detectors who find coins and they don't report them, or they report them maybe a year later or something like that. They're doing 4 to 6 years. It's ridiculous. But yeah, sorry, senior moment. I forgot what we were talking about 30 seconds ago.
That's all right. That's all right. I actually do want to move on to something different because I've been thinking about this for like about 20 minutes now since you brought up his name. You mentioned Charles Manson earlier. Do you know about Operation Midnight Climax?
No, I don't. That rings a bell, but I'm not familiar off the top of my head. What is it?
So that was a project that was connected to MK Ultra and mind control,
Wow.
where they were bringing in Johns to what these guys thought was a brothel, and the ladies were dosing them with LSD, and then basically they weren't getting their money's worth. They were getting observed while they were sitting there tripping their minds out, you know. But that was connected to the whole MK Ultra and the Manson topic, which has fascinated me for a long time because there's been speculation and some people say there's flat out proof that we were letting him out of jail and letting him off and sending him back out into the world with drugs and drugged up to do certain jobs, and allowed him to create the Manson family and, you know, create his compound.
Yeah, he was a really interesting character, right? I mean, he was in the studio with the Beach Boys at the same time.
Yeah, that's a wild one.
William Shepard.
Brian Wilson and got mad at him when the record failed or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, he was well liked by that sort of rock community. He was well known. Again, the Beatles dropped acid at Sharon Tate's house, and I was just watching some videos of Manson, and oh my God, he forgive me, but he was so cogent, and what he was saying was so spot on. And what happened, what he and his clan, his cult did is horrific and unforgivable. I'm not going there, but to hear him talk sounds like who's the big lecturer today? It sounded sensible, which was really surprising because in my head he was just an absolute madman, right? But you hear him talk now, and it's like interesting.
Quite often, madness and intelligence can seem like they're part of the same hand.
Well, and you know, again, this sounds real. We've been so lied to about every aspect of history. It's ridiculous. And again, I come back to: do you really think we're spinning at 1,000 miles an hour while traveling 66,600 miles an hour around the sun, 500,000 miles an hour around the Milky Way, and 1,000,000 miles an hour? I mean, come. Just imagine that in your head. But the stars are in the same place every night. So everything we've been told really is a lie. And the Tartarian thread is another great example of it. The Chicago World's Fair, all those amazing buildings, what they built them in 2 or 3 years and they get rid of them. Really? Why? Why are there buildings that have the first floor submerged and windows with mud covering 3/4 of them? Why do early photographs of San Francisco show buildings to support a populace of millions and there's nobody in the photo? And how did that person get up there to take that? We've just come out of the Great Reset. Not my phrase, theirs. And a lot of talk about reducing the population. Their words, not mine. And what if there's been many great resets? And what if one of them silenced a society that was able to harness free energy and build things that supported free energy and Tesla kind of technology. I'm hoping that all this continues to come out. It appears as though it's heading that way. I do find this announcement about the pyramids really, really interesting, and these 2 or 3 kilometer pillars beneath.
Yeah. They were using the LiDAR, the ground penetrating technology, and they found this stuff.
It supports my whole ethos about the inner Earth, but I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it because if you look at those images critically, one, they don't show the known cavities, the Grand Gallery, the King's Chamber, the Queen's Chamber. They don't show those, the descending passage, but they show these pillars. How do we know they're pillars? It's as though somehow somebody wanted this information to be out there, but it's not backed up by the imagery. It really isn't. All the 3D extrapolations we see on social media are incredible. I'm not convinced. There may be something. We know there's tunnels and like a little mini city beneath Giza, but those pillars, 2 kilometers high, they're not substantiated by the images they're showing us. So I don't know what to believe at the moment.
What do you think about the Younger Dryas theory, where they talk about how there's the possibility, and supposedly there's evidence that there were civilizations long before what we know about that were possibly even as advanced as us or further that have been completely wiped out, like with no evidence of them, well, little to no evidence of them, and that even might be where the pyramids came from.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Younger Dryas has been popularized, if you will, by Graham Hancock, of course. And I know Graham. I've been to his home. He's a great guy.
Yeah, him and Randall Carlson. I love hearing them talk about it.
Yeah. I don't think he takes it far enough. He's talking about 12,500 BC. That's literally, figuratively, tip of the iceberg. Michael Cremo is, in his book Forbidden Archaeology, and if you get a chance to see any of his lectures, he'll be like, here's an archaeological find that says, based upon the levels and everything else, the archaeologist who is well-schooled says it's 5,000 years old, and he was humiliated. Here's something in Texas that shows, based upon the levels and all the other aspects of the find, it has to be 150,000 years old. All the archaeologists lost their job. Here's something that shows it's 500,000. Here's something that shows it's 1 million. Civilization goes back far, far, far further than we're led to believe. And this whole notion of evolution just appears to be complete bollocks. Apes, really? The ancient text said that we were an experiment, a hybrid, and that makes a lot more sense. That's what they're doing, to your point earlier, in the Denver airport, apparently, is experimenting with hybrids. Yeah, I mean, question everything.
So do you think, really quick, you were talking about hybrids. Is that where we get, do you think, and this is just speculation and just asking for opinion, is that where we get cryptids and these creatures that people see, Bigfoot, or Yeti,
Chupacabra,
swamp ape, and all these other creatures that they talk about?
I mean, it's a great question. I don't know. I think for me, there's one of two answers. One is just what you've said. It's experimenting with hybrids. That's done to this day. There's whistleblowers who claim that they've seen that experimenting of species, or it's like another dimension. If you're listening to WXRT, WGN is also on the radio, but you're not listening to that because you're tuned into a different frequency. What if that's the case with your Yetis of the world? And there's a place in the UK that has a lot of UFO sightings, black-eyed children, pig-headed men, and werewolves. Cannock Chase, it's called. And is it a paranormal hotspot? Is that a hotspot that has some kind of portal where you can enter another dimension? Is that where these creatures are coming from? It's a great question.
So I'm going to cut this part out because I just want to ask you now. We have like at least a page of different topics that we could go through into, but we don't want to keep you too long today. Can we have you back in like a couple of months to talk about some more stuff?
We'd be happy to.
Awesome. All right. So with that, I'm gonna ask you one more question, and then Kip is going to do our Bernard Pivot questionnaire at the end. So, what is your favorite conspiracy theory? Your dinner conversation, one that you like to talk about the most?
Yeah, my favorite conspiracy. That's a tough question because so many of them have become true. I'm running out of conspiracies, but I think this whole notion that there are many worlds beyond the ice wall, and we need to know in our lifetime what they're about. We need to know the true structure of the Earth. Is it flat? Is it round? And we need to know the different types of species that inhabit the greater part of the rock that we have a piece of land on. I'd also, as a fellow Chicagoan, like to know the conspiracy about my beloved Chicago Cubs winning the World Series, but yet their manager is completely disregarded, and no one ever speaks about the fact that after 108 years, Madden brought us the Holy Grail. And if you remember Game 7 of the Chicago Cubs World Series,
I remember it well.
He did like everything to try and lose. It was shocking. You have Hendricks pitching like Nolan Ryan, Greg Maddux, and you pull him up. He did everything to try to overmanage and lose that game. And in the post game celebrations where they have what's his name? He owns the Cubs.
Tom Ricketts.
Tom Ricketts standing next to Madden and standing next to who was the GM at the time?
I don't remember it, honestly.
Yeah. And they're all like dumbfounded by what Madden did in that final game. Was he trying to throw the game? That's a conspiracy. Was he going to be paid tens of millions of pounds to throw Game 7 of the World Series? Because he should have managed like it. And he's forgotten, airbrushed from history. Nobody ever talks about the man who brought us the Holy Grail after 108 years. He's like somehow shamed. I think that's a conspiracy that needs to be investigated.
We're going to put that one on the list for next time. By the way, his name was Jed Hoyer. He was the general manager.
No, not well, he is today, not Hoyer, but it's Epstein, right? Oh God, I'm kind of having a senior moment. What is his name?
Theo Epstein. Sorry.
Epstein. Yeah, there's too many Epsteins.
You're right. You're right. Jed Hoyer is the manager from 2016, I think, till or after that until now.
But Epstein and Ricketts, the look on their face as they were standing there.
We keep coming back to Epstein.
Like, what did you just do?
Did we just create our own conspiracy theory that Epsteins are trying to destroy the world?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Don't trust it. I think is the motto here.
All right. Well, before we get into this questionnaire, why don't you just tell everybody where they can find you, where they can read your material if they so choose.
Yeah, no, hey, thank you. Listen, I have nothing for sale. AndrewGough.com is my website where I publish all my research. And I have a show now called The Conspiracy Hour on Unified TV. But you could also see me on a number of programs on History Channel, Discovery Channel, that sort of thing as well. So, yeah, guys, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show.
Okay, so the final question.
It's been our pleasure as well.
The final questionnaire was created by Bernard Pivot and was made popular by Mr. James Lipton on Inside the Actor Studio. It's short answers. If you want to expand on them, go for it. But it's kind of quick fire, short answer questions.
Oh God. Okay. Yikes.
So, what is your favorite word?
Favorite word? I've never been asked such a difficult question. I'm told I say wow a lot.
Okay.
But
What is your
really quick, for the millennium, they had a huge wall in London, and everyone could write up their word of the millennium for the past 1,000 years. And they had Bob Geldof, the Boomtown Rats, on live television. They said, "Bob, what's your favorite word? What did he write?" And he said, "I wrote fuck," because it can be anything. It could be fuck you, what the fuck, are you fucking kidding? He went on to give like 100 examples, and the broadcaster was like, "Oh God, you can't say that."
It is the most versatile word in the English language.
Yeah.
Billy Connolly would tell you so.
Exactly.
What is your least favorite word?
Probably paradigm.
Okay. What sound or noise do you love?
Cubs win.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Sox win. No.
That hurts.
Yeah, no, sorry. You guys are off to a great start. I mean, upwards and onwards.
First one.
Yeah, I don't. What sound do I love the sound of opening a whiskey bottle, a nice single malt, that little pop sound.
Mhm. Okay. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I'd like to be a vet. You get to treat animals, help them. That'd be cool.
What profession other than your own would you not like to attempt?
I think, oh God, probably some kind of television announcer that has to read a script.
Creatively, what turns you on?
Demystifying something that everyone thinks is a mystery, but it's not. And conversely, finding mysteries that nobody recognizes.
In the same vein, what turns you off?
Yeah, I think people who use others' research and work and claim it's theirs. In this esoteric world, there's a lot of that going on, a lot of backstabbing, and everyone is just kind of trying to make it sound as though they've discovered everything.
Okay, we kind of covered this already, but what is your favorite curse word?
Curse word? Well, I think that F word is probably everyone's. But are you kidding me? As in John McEnroe, or I was born at night, but not last night, was probably my favorite phrase.
Okay. And finally, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
The Minnesota Vikings have won the Super Bowl.
You know what? I'm all right with that one. I'm okay.
I see the purple, Tristan, in your room there, and your dog. That's really cool. He wants to play fetch.
He is.